David Mercer is an archivist at Memorial University, and lately he's been sifting through all of this. Newspaper clippings, photographs, letters. This all belonged to one man, Thomas Matthew Mary Nangle.
There are some wonderful treasures here.
Thomas Nangle was a Catholic priest in St. John's. During the First World War, he served as chaplain to the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, a non-combatant, but many of his friends were killed or wounded, and he was in the trenches, encouraging and comforting the soldiers. After the war, he returned to the battlefields to help recover the dead and ensure they had a proper burial. It was a gruesome job. He played a leading role in the creation of the Trail of the Caribou monuments on the Western Front, which commemorate the places where the regiment fought. And he was the engine behind efforts to establish the century-old National War Memorial in St. John's. But despite his prominent role in honoring those who served and died, Nangle pulled a disappearing act after 1924 and never again stepped foot on his native soil.
What he would have experienced at that time just, to me, seems to be pretty horrific.
In 1926, after leaving the priesthood, Nangle settled in Rhodesia, known today as Zimbabwe, in southern Africa, about 11,000 kilometers away from Newfoundland. He received a grant of land and became involved in everything from farming and newspaper publishing to mining and politics. He got married and raised 4 children. Nangle died in early 1972 at the age of 83. But a decade or so before he died, Nangle sent some of his personal records back to Newfoundland to then Premier Joey Smallwood. And for more than 3 decades, they've been here at Queen Elizabeth II Library in St. John's, where this archivist recently discovered this, a letter from Thomas Nangle to Premier Smallwood. Dated 1960. In it, Nangle reveals why he dropped everything, changed his life, and disappeared from Newfoundland. The reason? The war.
During the war, I lost all faith in Christianity and became an agnostic. After the war, I was faced with the choice of being a living hypocrite all the rest of my life, or clearing out to avoid as much scandal as possible. I chose the latter and cut adrift entirely from Newfoundland.
Here's how Mercer interprets the letter.
As a former priest living in St. John's, with the under the scrutiny of the church and the strong religious community of St. John's at the time, it would have made things very difficult for him, I would imagine. So best to move away, to leave the province, start afresh, live your life in peace.
This researcher and author wrote a book about Nangle and got to know some of his children during his research. He's not surprised by Nangle's letter to Smallwood.
So how could he come back here and stay in the priesthood and stay in amongst these parishioners whom he loved, when now he was questioning all of this in his own mind as an agnostic?
Nangle also had deep regrets about undertaking recruiting efforts during the war.
His son Hugh told me that really upset his father, because he was the rest of his life knowing that he recruited a number of these young people who went over, then he administered to them, then he had to bury some, and then for 4 or 5 years after the war was over, he had to look for their bodies.
Nangle turned down invites over the years to his homeland, but Gary Brown can't help but wonder what Nangle may have accomplished if he remained in Newfoundland.
I could see him easily becoming the Prime Minister of Newfoundland when we were an independent country. He wasn't someone that could be kept down easily, I can guarantee you that, Terry.
Nangle may have cut himself adrift from Newfoundland, but his legacy is as strong as ever. This newly refurbished war memorial has now been a focal point of remembrance for a century, and now another of Nangle's dreams, the creation of a tomb of the unknown soldier, has also been realized. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.